World History Discussions on the Traditions and Encounters World History Textbook, Chapter 5, Part 1. It's the first of several chapters on China. We'll be right back to China in Chapter 8, and then we'll talk about them a little bit in Chapter 12, a lot in Chapter 13, a little in Chapter 17, a little in Chapter 21. You get the point. We're going to talk about China a lot, because they seem to manage to dominate the world in some way or another in every single era. Well, except for most of the last 500 years when they were kind of in decline. We're going to get to that much later. But now in the 21st century, China has completely resurged. As I said, I did English teaching over there in the town of Dali, southwest China. Nowhere near Xi'an, nowhere near where this picture was taken. Way to the southwest of historical China. But nonetheless, I was in that civilization 15, 16 years ago, and it's definitely up and coming. It's definitely the United States' biggest rival, or one of its biggest rivals in the 21st century, and it's got the longest continuous history in the world. Yes, Egypt and Mesopotamia started over 1,000 years before Shah China did, but those civilizations don't have the same cultural continuity that China has for 4,000 years. So we're going to talk about the earliest of the earliest Chinese civilizations in Chapter 5, from roughly 4,000 years ago to a little over 2,000 years ago, basically the BCE time period in the era before the Qin dynasty united all of China in 221 BCE. But first, our catchy opener, which is about King Yu and the taming of the Yellow River, and that's Heko Falls, about maybe 200 miles north of Xi'an, which is the region of north-central China that these ancient kingdoms were in, and I call it historical China, because that's where most of the stuff was happening. So anyway, you had Yao, Shun, and Yu, according to the legend. And so Yao brought harmony to his family and larger society and ultimately all the states of China, while Shun succeeded Yao and continued his work by giving us the 4 seasons and uniform weights, measures, and units of time. Remember that one way that archaeologists know way to the west of there that the Indus Valley was a real civilization, Harappa Mohenjo-Daro, what we talked about in Chapter 4, is uniform weights and measurements. But finally, the biggest hero of all was King Yu. King Yu rescued China from the raging Yellow River, which is also nicknamed China's Sorrow. It's yellow because of Leos, Leoss. It's one of those where you read it but you can't pronounce it. And that's this fertile soil that comes from when the glaciers retreated. And that's why the river has this soupy yellow consistency to it. But it's super fertile, and it's also super easy to work with, which means that the Chinese could use their tools of stone and bones. As we're going to learn, the early emperors of China monopolized bronze. They controlled all the access to copper and tin, and they didn't let common people have access to it. So you didn't have really tough farm tools until the later Zhou dynasty, when you get to iron tools and iron weapons. That's coming up much later. I don't want to give the game away yet, but bronze was monopolized by the leaders. But anyway, what King Yu is said to have done is he dredged all these canals. He dredged the river to make it deeper, and then he dug all these parallel canals to help the Yellow River have a more peaceful course to the sea. Because like the Indus River that we talked about in the last chapter in modern-day Pakistan, the Yellow River is boisterous and very hard to control, and it floods all the time, earning it the nickname China's Sorrow. In any case, the rest of this chapter is going to be about the earliest societies in China, which you can see right here. You got the Sha in yellow, the Shang in orange, and the Zhou in, I guess, bluish. And you can see what regions they were in. And yes, this is the area around Xi'an here, but those are ancient cities. Actually, Xi'an's more over around where Hao is. But yep, that's where we're going to get to next. We're going to talk about the earliest 3 of the many Chinese dynasties. Pumped.